everyone, my name is Midnight Succubus, and I'm here to narrate some of the creepiest stories I found on Reddit. The links to each post will be in the description box below, and if you enjoy my content or listening to the sound of my voice, leave a like, comment, and consider subscribing. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, and just listen. Sister almost abducted. This is fairly short, so I don't have all the specific details. When my family, mom, sister, and myself, was in Oregon several years ago, we went to this winery outdoor festival type thing. Good food, live music, pretty chill. But also kind of in the boonies. My cousins and I went exploring because we weren't old enough to drink and were getting fairly bored. After we got back, I heard news that I still think about to this day. Apparently, a woman approached my sister. She was about 8 at the time, and asked her if she wanted to see her puppy in her car. While she was walking away with my sister by the hand, my family spotted her and asked what the hell she was doing. There was no dog, and the woman quickly left. It scares me to this day to think of what this woman's intentions were. Posting because it just happened. I'm scared and trying to calm down by writing this. At 6:30 this morning, I went to walk one of my dogs. I live in an apartment that resembles a townhome, and I live on the ground floor. As I'm walking my dog, I pass by a row of cars, and all of a sudden, my dog stops and starts huffing and puffing at this one truck. No one is in the truck, so I thought there must be a squirrel underneath it or something. When all of a sudden, my dog's attention changes, and there is a man that pops up from underneath or behind the truck. I couldn't tell. I immediately turn around and start speed walking back to my apartment. I wasn't wanting to overreact because, hey, maybe it's his truck and I don't know, he's doing something to it. But then my dog keeps huffing and puffing behind me, and when I turn around, the man was clenching something in his right hand and barreling towards me. I immediately take off in a sprint towards my apartment and make it back safely. I immediately woke up my boyfriend, and within the 30 seconds it took him to go outside, he was gone. Odd feeling of being watched. Yesterday, I was getting lots of spiritual TikToks on my For You page, which of course I didn't mind. Many things about spirits and deities. I enjoyed it. Until I felt this odd feeling something had come into my room. I flinched at each noise. I even felt like I was being stood over. I swore I saw small white figures, but I tried to take my mind off of it. I tried watching stuff on my phone, but I didn't feel safe. Until I forced myself to sleep. Everything in my room was loud, and I could hear breathing. I was horrified last night. Heard a woman and little girl screaming in the woods at night. So this happened over the weekend while I was home from college for my mom's birthday. On Saturday night, I had a couple beers with my girlfriend who was spending the weekend at our house because my parents are super chill. At about 12:30 a.m., a few minutes after my parents went to bed, I went out to the back porch to grab a couple more beers for myself and my girlfriend, who was waiting in the basement where we planned to watch Game of Thrones for a while before going to sleep. I opened the back door and stepped onto the back porch. Immediately, the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and I felt like I was being watched from the tree line. My back porch overlooks the backyard, which leads directly into thick woods. I thought nothing of it at first because I always feel a little spooked going outside at night. But as I opened the cooler, I heard it. In my mind, it was unmistakable. The agonizing screams of what sounded like my next-door neighbor and her teenage daughter. What's even more terrifying is that I swear they were screaming a very specific thing. Sam, help us, please, Sam, my name. Now, I was drunk and already on edge, so frankly, I turned around without the beers and locked the door behind me as I went back inside. Then I heard my mom's voice calling from upstairs, asking me if I'd heard it. I responded yes, and asked if she knew what it was. She didn't have a clear answer, only speculation, but she knew for a fact that our neighbors were both inside their home. Something was watching me and my brother from behind my window. No one would ever believe me, but I want to share this story because I talked about it yesterday for the first time. I'm sorry for any typos, you see. English is not my native language. I live in Northern Europe. My country is cold and covered by a large forest and several lakes. My family consists of my mother, father, and an older brother who is 3 years older than me. He's really important in this story. It's also important to know that my parents' house is in the middle of nowhere, just forest around it. There aren't even proper roads or any street lights. The nearest neighbor lives really far away. In my country, winter comes early and lasts longer than summer, so the days are dark almost all year around. My father is a fireman and my mother is a nurse, so they have always been on night shifts. They have left me and my brother home alone since we were just toddlers. I don't know if it's even legal to leave us alone, but my brother has always been good at taking care of me. This particular evening was close to Christmas. Both of us were on winter break, but my brother still went to ice hockey practice. He was really tired that night after practice. Father and mother had gone to work at night and left us alone. I was 8 at the time and my brother was 11. We often slept next to each other downstairs in our parents' bed, but I decided to be a big girl that night and sleep in my own bed upstairs. I really just wanted to play my Nintendo and knew my brother wouldn't let me. My brother was so tired after training and he just wanted to go to sleep. We ate, brushed our teeth, and went to our rooms upstairs. My room faced the forest, and his room faced the only dirt road. There is a hall and a toilet between our rooms. My brother must have fallen asleep right away, but I played and played. I played for so long that I lost track of time. I was under my covers in case my brother would come to scold me. I started to hear something outside. However, I didn't pay attention to it at first. I have lived all my life in the middle of the forest. You can hear voices from there all the time. The small noises changed in a second. Someone started shouting, almost screaming. It sounded like a grown man who was wounded. I lifted my head from under the covers, startled, and listened for a moment. I called out my brother's name, but he didn't answer. I got up from my bed and ran to my brother's room. He slept soundly. I started rocking him awake. At the same time, I saw from his alarm clock that it was 2 a.m. My brother woke up confused. "Did you hear that?" I asked in a whisper. My brother's eyes widened and all sleep vanished from his eyes. He sprang up. He didn't say anything. He walked towards my room. The shouting came from somewhere in the forest. We stood together in my room and stared out into the darkness. I think someone needs help," I said quietly. But my brother's expression didn't change. His face was like stone. "No. No one needs the help of 2 kids. Besides, if he needed help, he would be screaming for help." My brother turned around. He was right. I heard no words, just screaming. My brother walked downstairs and I ran after him. Our house has 3 doors. He tried each of them to make sure they were locked. He took our father's headlamp because it had the strongest light. Then he picked up the house phone. It was 2010, so not all of the kids had their own phones. He made sure all the lights were off and took my hand. He started to lead us back upstairs. Then he stopped. The shouting had changed. It no longer sounded scared or needy for help. It sounded irritated, almost angry. Like it was annoyed that we didn't come out looking for it. My brother squeezed my hand and pulled me upstairs. He stared at my room for a moment before he pulled me into his room with him. He closed the door and sat behind his bed, pulling me into his arms. It was dark everywhere. My brother hadn't turned on the headlamp, but he had 112 ready on the phone. That's our country's emergency number. We sat there in silence. The sound had come closer until it was clearly behind the window of my room. We heard someone banging on my window. I started to sob. My brother stroked my hand to calm me down, but it didn't help. I was so scared. The sound seemed to be coming closer and closer. It had climbed the fire escape under my window and was now traveling along the rain gutters towards my brother's window. Then it became quiet. It stopped screaming, but we could hear it clinging to the rain gutters to get closer to us. Then it was too quiet. My brother turned on the headlamp and pointed the light towards his window. Nothing. He turned off the light and waited for a moment. Then he pointed the light at the window again. Nothing. He turned it off and waited. He pointed the light at the window. Nothing. He turned it off. Then there was a big crash, as if a pile of snow had dripped from the roof down to the terrace. My brother flashed the light in the window. There was something on it. The kind of trace that is left when you breathe too close to the glass in cold weather. There was a trace of mist on it. My brother immediately turned off the light. Whatever it was, it had fallen down because my brother's window has nothing to hold on to. We started hearing moaning. It sounded only partially human anymore. It sounded more like a bear. If you've ever heard the sound of a bear makes when it's been shot, that's what it sounded like. But it still had a touch of man. Then the voice became angry again. It threw a full tantrum. It started hitting the wall of the house. I squeezed my eyes shut and pressed my head against my brother's shirt. It raged for a while, but started to whine and moan again. It no longer sounded human at all. I can't describe what it was like, but it didn't sound natural. My brother dropped the headlamp on the floor and hugged me tightly. We listened to the sound for quite a long time. I don't remember at what point I fell asleep, but I woke up in the morning. The beautiful morning sun reflected against the white snow. I was laying on my brother's bed, and he was sitting next to me reading comics. He smiled. Had I been dreaming? I didn't have time to say anything when we heard the lock on the front door open. It was 9 o'clock. My dad had come home. My brother cheerfully jumped out of bed and ran to greet Dad downstairs. Maybe I had a nightmare and went to sleep next to my brother. It doesn't sound impossible, especially since my brother didn't mention it in the morning. I convinced myself that I had really seen a nightmare that felt real. I believed for many, many years. However, that changed. My brother came to visit me yesterday. Nowadays, I live in the capital of my country, far from my mother and father, because I go to university. My brother broke up with his long-term girlfriend, and I promised that he could bunk at my place as long as he needed. We had a lot of fun, just like old times. We drank some wine, watched a movie, and just talked about everything. Then we started talking about some deeper things, which usually happens after drinking wine. I turned to look out my window. Winter was coming, and it was already dark. It brought back childhood memories. I told him about a dream I had when I was little, while looking at the street lamps outside. This darkness reminds me of when I had a nightmare as a child. I dreamed that someone screamed behind my window and I hid in your room with you. Wasn't I a strange girl? I laughed and turned to look at my brother. My brother is 23 now, and he's huge. He's into bodybuilding, and he has a blonde beard. He looks a bit like a Viking, and I've never seen a look on him like that as an adult. He looked at me with big eyes, and he was pale, like he had just seen a ghost. I freaked out a little. What? I asked awkwardly. You remember that? He asked. It got quiet. What do you mean? Wasn't it a dream? I was so confused. My brother looked really startled, as if I had digged up a memory from his mind that he wanted to forget. Answer me, I thought I had a nightmare. I was startled too. My brother shook his head. I thought you wouldn't remember that. You were so little. I hoped you would forget. My brother looked at me blankly and told me his side of the story. He told how I had fallen asleep in his arms from exhaustion. He pushed me to his bed, but didn't fall asleep himself. He sat by my side all night like a guard dog. The morning had begun to dawn. The sound began to fade until it just disappeared. My brother still couldn't sleep. He decided to start reading comics to pass the time. And in the morning, when Father had come home, my brother had gone out to look for tracks, but since it had snowed all night and all morning, all the tracks were covered. For the next week, my brother visited my room several times a night to make sure I was sleeping safely. We started talking more about what happened. Neither of us ever mentioned about what happened to anyone. I asked him why he didn't call 112, but he just shook his head. Who would have believed me? He was right. It would have sounded like a prank invented by little boys. My brother also said that he was annoyed that he didn't flash the light on the window sooner. He would have wanted to see what the creature looked like. I was just happy that I didn't see anything. I'm also happy to know that I'm not crazy and it wasn't a dream. I have a witness. My brother experienced it too and remembers it better than I do. No one else has to believe me. No one else would believe me. Of course, it's also possible that somehow we created the whole thing in our heads. We have no physical evidence of what happened, and it happened years ago. It's very possible that we were just kids with overreactive imaginations. I'm certainly not denying that possibility. However, I'm interested to know if anyone else has experienced something similar, and if you have, did you see it? That creature? And if you did, what did it look like? Well, there you have it, some of the creepiest stories I've found on Reddit. Again, the links will be provided in the description box below. If you enjoyed this content, please consider giving me a like, comment, and consider subscribing. I try to post every Thursday. I am still working on my social media, so I will update you guys as soon as that is up. But thanks so much for listening, and see you next time.